Amid a torrential downpour, Ryder Blackwood, a ruthless billionaire, pulls up beside twin girls Nova and Lyric in front of an abandoned house. Its rotting door creaks open to reveal Rowena Hart and a shocking family secret. Octavia Reid's isolation and Cassian Troy's dark power intertwine, turning blood ties into a life-or-death gamble. Can love uncover the conspiracy before it all collapses? Ryder Blackwood gently pressed the accelerator, his sleek new Mercedes gliding smoothly along the winding country road, the only sounds beyond the engine's hum being the rustling of pine trees in the autumn breeze. On the GPS screen, a small blinking circle indicated he was 40 minutes away from a meeting with investors in a remote town. The twilight sky glowed with a crimson sunset at the horizon, but ominous clouds swirled and tilted, hinting at a distant threat. At that very moment, as the first drizzle of the season began to fall, Ryder spotted a faint silhouette by the roadside. He leaned forward to observe, two figures, far too small to be adults. In an instant, the engine's growl softened, the car slowed, and its tires left tracks on the damp roadside. Raindrops splattered against the windshield as Ryder Blackwood steadied his racing pulse. He pulled over to the shoulder, cracked the window, and inhaled the sharp, earthy scent of wet soil. At his feet, two small figures stood motionless, their dresses caked with mud, tattered ivory fabric speckled with moonlight, and tangled blonde hair clinging to their weary faces. They didn't cry out, only stared at him with piercing blue eyes, clear and filled with fear. The sky unleashed heavier rain, fat droplets pounding the ground, but Ryder didn't hesitate. He shut off the engine, the sudden silence heavy, broken only by the rain hammering the car's roof. "Hello?" he said softly, his deep, warm voice carrying enough authority to quell any panic. The billion-dollar deals he negotiated daily had never unnerved him like this moment. Stepping out of the car, Ryder crouched low to avoid intimidating the children. The rain grew fiercer, soaking his designer suit jacket at the shoulders. Nova and Lyric froze, stepping back toward the bushes, but their eyes remained fixed on him. Not wanting them to shiver in the cold, he swiftly removed his expensive leather coat and gently draped it over their shoulders. Nova's eyes blinked rapidly, while Lyric trembled, soft sobs escaping amid the downpour. "I'm not here to hurt you," Ryder said, his tone full of care. "I just want to help. What are your names?" No response came, only the sight of tiny hands pointing to a distant spot behind him. Ryder Blackwood turned slowly, his steps halting, his mind caught between reason and instinct. Should he bring the girls to the car or investigate that place? Before he could decide, Nova's trembling lips parted. "The house," her faint voice was swallowed by the rain. Ryder nodded, taking a deep breath to steady himself, then gently placed his hands on their shoulders. "All right, we'll explore together." He leaned down, giving Lyric a reassuring look, then stepped toward the abandoned house, its rotting wooden door ajar, its moss-covered walls hiding countless desolate secrets. As they neared the threshold, the scene grew increasingly eerie. Towering ancient trees closed their canopies, allowing only faint slivers of light to pierce through. The cracked walls were stained with mold, resembling a snake's skin. A sudden gust whistled through the gaps, and Ryder flinched as his footsteps echoed on the decayed wooden floor, as if the entire space whispered a warning. The air reeked of mildew and rotting earth, making each breath heavy. Ahead, a shattered window leaked rainwater, and a tattered curtain fluttered in the wind, resembling the wing of a dead creature. Ryder Blackwood paused, his eyes scanning the desolate scene. Nova gripped his hand tighter, while Lyric pressed close to him, her lips pursed in fear. The flashlight in his hand illuminated a crack in the wall, casting dim shadows that seemed to grin like ghostly faces. His heart raced, partly out of concern for the children, partly from an irresistible curiosity. What had this house witnessed to drive these two small girls to this lonely place in the midst of a storm? Crouching lower, Ryder's voice deepened. "How long have you been here?" No answer came, only a fleeting, anguished glint in Nova's blue eyes. The last rays of sunset vanished, leaving a gray, oppressive darkness. Above, thick black clouds gathered, as if poised to swallow the abandoned house whole. In that moment, Ryder Blackwood realized, crossing that rotting threshold meant confronting not only the relentless rain, but also secrets that would not allow him to turn back. And the heart of this multi-million-dollar man tightened with the fragile hope radiating from the two children behind him. Ryder Blackwood gently tightened his grip on Nova's hand, the rain pounding the tin roof like war drums echoing in his ears. His voice, warm yet resolute, whispered, "I'll never abandon you two." A gust of early-season wind tore through the cracked doorway, shredding the tattered curtain into fragments, like the mournful shroud of the abandoned house. Under the flickering beam of his flashlight, Lyric's shadow danced on the rotting floorboards, wavering like the image of an ancient soul, struggling to reclaim warmth. In that moment, all thoughts of contracts and high-tech futures seemed to falter before the story of these two girls. Ryder took a deep breath, letting the musty dampness and cold seep into his lungs, then boldly stepped over the threshold, leading the tiny hands clinging tightly to him. Inside, the flashlight's beams sliced through the dust-laden air, particles drifting down like filthy snow. The dilapidated interior lay bare, wooden frames exposed like skeletons, tattered fabric draped over chairs like mummified remains, and walls stained with mold, etched with the restless claw marks of time. Ryder stepped lightly over shards of broken glass, his footsteps whispering as if through an empty cathedral. His leather coat was streaked with mud, but no one cared about elegance amid this wreckage. Scattered old bottles, cracked porcelain plates, and a table pushed against the corner creaked whenever he leaned against it. A faint burnt odor wafted from the rotting planks, like the final breath of an ancient being. The space felt like a forgotten sketch, where every mark told a horrifying story. Under the flickering flashlight, Nova followed silently, her large gray-blue eyes shimmering with both trust and fear. Lyric tilted her head, her lips pressed tight against an unspoken pain. Ryder gave a slight nod, his lips forming silent words of comfort. "I'm right here." The wind howled through the walls, and dripping water from the leaky roof formed a disjointed melody. On the ceiling, cracks spread like spiderwebs, faint rays of light slipping through to illuminate swirling dust. He wondered how many hopeless screams this house had witnessed, how many silent tears had fallen. Each of Ryder Blackwood's steps echoed in the chillingly quiet space, like mournful notes dragging out a tragic, endless song. Suddenly, the faint outline of an overturned armchair appeared before them. The flashlight revealed a scrap of white fabric stained with small bloodstains. Ryder stopped, crouching low, tilting the light to see more clearly. It was the body of an elderly woman, her silver hair spilling over the rotting wood, her trembling hand half clutching, half releasing the chair's edge. Dried blood crusted at her temple, pooling beneath her head like a wilted petal pressed into black snow. Nova and Lyric stood frozen behind him, their clear eyes giving way to shock. The air grew still. The rain outside morphed into a somber dirge, and the wind whistling through the wooden cracks sighed for a wretched fate. Ryder Blackwood drew a deep breath, his trembling hand touching the woman's rain-soaked shoulder. He carefully lifted the white fabric, revealing a weathered face, its deep wrinkles a testament to years of hardship. She opened her eyes slowly, innocent as a bird from a broken nest, her misty pupils faintly recognizing the figure before her. "The children are safe," her raspy voice managed, still carrying the warmth of a grandmother. Nova stepped forward, her tiny hands resting on the woman's frail one, like a fragile flower clinging to the last remnant of its cradle. Lyric knelt slowly, her eyes tracing the woman's faint breaths as if fearing any movement might steal away their final source of comfort. The rain continued to fall steadily outside, the flickering flashlight casting ethereal beams across the stained floorboards. Ryder let out a soft sigh, his other hand checking the woman's pulse before turning to Nova and Lyric. I'll call for help now. But the phone signal flickered and died within the thick, damp walls. He looked at the old woman, now recalling her name, Rowena Hart, and whispered, "I'll get you to safety." In that moment, the icy darkness of the abandoned house seemed to crack under the warmth of human connection, stirring in the heart of even the coldest wanderer a belief that, whether commoner or noble, we all yearn for a shoulder to lean on, a hand to hold tightly, to know we're not entirely lost in the relentless storm called fate. Ryder Blackwood drew a long, choking breath as his knees met the rotting wooden floor, the creaking boards groaning like the abandoned house's sigh after the storm. He hunched over, his trembling hand resting on Rowena Hart's wrist, searching for her faint pulse. It flickered weakly, a dying ember that could fade at any moment. The dim flashlight beam illuminated her pale face, deep wrinkles etching a lifetime of bitter hardship. In his chest, the heart that once tallied billion-dollar deals now surged with emotion, sorrow, worry, and a crushing sense of responsibility. Nova and Lyric stepped back, their blue eyes brimming with a chaotic blend of fear and hope, like two fragile flowers awaiting a warm miracle. The rain whipped through the leaky roof's gaps like sharp needles piercing each breath, so Ryder didn't dare hesitate. He gently turned Rowena's wrist, searching for the source of the bleeding. The leather jacket once used to warm the girls now served as a makeshift bandage. He tore off a strip and pressed it against the wound on Rowena's temple, muttering, "Hang on, I'll get help soon." The blood soaked into the leather, staining it with splotches of red under the yellow light, a stark warning of a life hanging by a thread. The light in his pocket flickered as he pulled out his phone, his heart pounding as the screen displayed no service. The rain fell harder, heavy droplets clattering against the ground, the sound of an ambulance seeming a world away. Ryder Blackwood stood abruptly, a chill racing down his spine as a memory surfaced. 5 years ago, he'd organized a first aid course for his top executives. Back then, he'd been all business, glasses on, practicing chest compressions with precision. Now, in this frigid room, he finally understood the raw fear and desperate resolve of saving a real human life. He softly called to the girls. "Nova, Lyric, can you help me a little?" Nova nodded shakily, her eyes glinting with fragile trust. Ryder instructed Lyric to hold the flashlight, angling it to better illuminate the wound. Lyric tilted her head, her small hand gripping the light tightly, its beam focusing into a steady glow reflected in her frightened yet resolute eyes. In that moment, he seemed to hear the whisper of blood still flowing, "Save me." That alone was enough to ignite every skill honed over years within his heart. With no time to waste, Ryder rushed to the back door, the rain hammering his car's roof. He started the engine, his left arm still clutching the windbreaker draped over Nova and Lyric, his right hand frantically checking the signal icon. A single bar flickered, then vanished, his heart clenched, a wave of helplessness rising. But there was no room for fear. Ryder floored the accelerator, pulling up to the front door, running while dialing emergency services. Rain soaked his shoulders, but he felt no cold, only the sound of his ragged breaths and the faint voice of 911. 911. What's your emergency? The voice on the other end was unfamiliar yet warm, like the hope the girls clung to in the abandoned house. Ryder quickly relayed the GPS coordinates, muttering, "An elderly woman is injured. 2 children. We need an ambulance now." In an instant, the rain faded from his ears, replaced by the operator's calming tone. "Help is on the way. Keep the victims stable and the children warm." Ryder Blackwood's eyes flashed with determination. He'd conquered countless tough deals, but now his only partner was life itself. As the call ended, he turned and pulled Nova and Lyric into a tight embrace, as if pouring into them the strength he'd gathered in his hands. "I've called for help," he whispered, his voice firm yet gentle. "Now we wait together, and I won't let anyone hurt you." Nova nestled into his chest, her small hand brushing his soaked jacket. while Lyric tilted her face to meet his gaze, their eyes grasping an unbreakable vow. In that moment, the space brimmed with human warmth, defying the brutal storm, marking the start of a rescue, not just for a stranger, but for two fragile lives that had touched the heart of a man who once saw wealth as his purpose. The rain washed away the dust on the desolate road, but tears of worry lingered in Ryder Blackwood's mind. He looked toward the house where Rowena Hart's still form lay, with Nova and Lyric huddled close. In his heart, an unprecedented promise took root. No matter where life led him, whether to the heights of billionaire bravado or the pressures of the boardroom, safety for these girls would remain his steadfast goal. And as the distant wail of sirens grew louder, he knew he'd earned the trust of those small souls. A responsibility that left no room for hesitation. Ryder Blackwood knelt on the rotting wooden floor, his ragged breaths rising with each taut heartbeat, the creaking boards echoing like the abandoned house's warning. The flashlight in Nova's hand cast a dim glow on Rowena Hart's pale face, highlighting the dried blood at her temple, red like a faded petal bleeding into a hazy oil painting. Ryder leaned forward, his cold hands searching for signs of injury, feeling a tremor in his chest. A heart accustomed to the rhythm of market tides, now fragile before a human life. Each passing second was a silent scream, a needle piercing the helplessness of failing to save that faint breath. Lyric's eyes flickered with hope as Ryder gently pressed a torn handkerchief to the wound, but the rain continued to hammer the tin roof, pounding like relentless drums. In that moment, all his business acumen felt meaningless, replaced by the echo of a first aid course he'd once taught his executives, ringing like a wake-up call. When it matters, don't crumble under the challenge. He lifted Rowena's wrist, feeling the faint pulse, like a lamp running out of oil, burning its final spark. "Hold on," he whispered, his voice steely yet cold as a blade's edge. "I won't let you leave these girls." Suddenly his phone buzzed sharply, but the screen only showed no service. Ryder sprang up, draping his jacket over Nova and Lyric, then rushed to the shattered window, rain pouring over his shoulders like a storm's wrath. He started the car, fingers swiping the screen, eyes bloodshot in the flashlight's glow. His heart thundered, his mind racing with calculations. He had to call an ambulance, keep the girls warm, get Rowena Hart out of this dangerous place. Rain stung his face, icy, but his resolve burned like a flame crawling through a stormy night. 911, I need emergency help. Ryder's voice boomed through the speaker, commanding as if launching a life-or-death campaign. The rain softened, as if yielding to the operator's voice. "Hello, what's your emergency?" Ryder breathed heavily, barely hearing the wind, but he stayed calm. "I'm in the woods off the road at an abandoned house. An elderly woman is injured. 2 young girls need warmth and protection. I'll wait here." Each word was an arrow piercing the muddy rain, sealing an unshakable promise. As he ended the call, the operator's voice lingered in his mind. "An ambulance is on the way. Keep the victims stable and the children safe." Ryder Blackwood managed a faint smile in the rain, though water soaked his shoulders and fear gripped his heart, warmed by the assurance. Like dawn breaking through dark clouds, he hurried back, resuming first aid on Rowena Hart with the makeshift bandage, the blood now stanched, her heart still beating, a fragile glimmer of hope amid the ashes. The man who once rode market waves like a carp in a torrent now knelt there, hands smeared with rain and mud, tirelessly easing the pain of a woman he'd never met. Nova and Lyric stood close, their eyes alight with trust. Lyric shakily draped a thin jacket over Rowena, while Nova leaned in, listening to the faint heartbeat, a fragile melody never so vital. Suddenly, through the flashlight's beam, the silhouette of an ambulance emerged beyond the pines. Its flashing lights blinked like ribbons of hope stitching together the fragments. Ryder leapt up, running toward the vehicle while shouting, "Over here, at the entrance, an elderly woman is badly injured. The girls are there." His voice was firm, like a commander in a stormy battlefield. The young driver and paramedic jumped out, wielding backup flashlights, and reached Rowena Hart. They lifted her onto a stretcher with care, as if handling a delicate treasure. Before the ambulance departed, Ryder Blackwood pulled the girls into a tight embrace, leaning down so they could hear his vow. "I'll always be here for you. I won't let anyone hurt you." Gusts of wind whipped past, separating the two small figures in the swaying rain, but in their young eyes, hopeless fear was gone, replaced by a growing spark of trust, affirming a new mission: to protect these fragile lives with all his heart and resolve. As the ambulance rolled away, Ryder Blackwood stood in the torrential rain, hearing a powerful call in his heart. Begin a new chapter where the human spirit rises above all ambition. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the hospital room's window like a gentle whisper, stirring Rowena Hart awake after days of unconsciousness. In the faint glow, she saw Nova and Lyric sitting by her bedside, their clear eyes brimming with worry and hope. The steady beep of the heart monitor sounded like a soothing melody, marking the return of life after a brutal ordeal. She offered a faint smile, her frail hands brushing the pristine white blanket, the wrinkles on her face like time's etchings of pain and faith. "Do you remember the old stories?" Nova asked softly, her voice like a harp string trembling with a newly begun song. Rowena Hart nodded, a spark of long-dormant memories igniting in her heart. Once she had been a teacher in a small city school, where candlelit nights stretched long with lessons on poetry and arithmetic. Each morning, Rowena Hart donned an elegant traditional dress, her voice ringing like a bell cart, awakening dreams of reading and writing in young souls. She still recalled the chalk dust smudging her lesson plans, the rich aroma of green tea in a porcelain cup during breaks, and the crystalline laughter of children like chirping birds in a summer garden. She instilled in them faith in the future, sketching numbers and letters on the board like butterflies flaunting their colors, guiding their tender dreams skyward. The bustling classroom was a universe of light where every child was led by the hand to touch knowledge. Then came the day cancer struck down her gentle husband, draining their savings and turning their home, once filled with loving voices, into a blurred memory. Rowena Hart left the lectern, carrying a suitcase of medicine and a forced smile, wandering through chilling hospital corridors. Years of teaching savings dissolved into vials of drugs and cold emergency rooms. The last time they watched a sunset through a hospital window, her husband's fading eyes still gleamed with eternal love. When his presence vanished, their home became an empty shell, a heart without a beat. She sold their old bicycle, then the bookshelf brimming with student memories. Everything faded, leaving only clinging loneliness and a velvet handkerchief soaked with tears. Homeless, Rowena Hart drifted into an invisible existence, curling up on park benches as passers-by ignored her like a fallen leaf. Winter winds bit through her skin, but solitude was colder still. She longed for her classroom, the chirping teacher calls, the eager eyes gazing at the board. Then, one dark night, under flickering streetlights, she heard muffled sobs behind a slammed supermarket door. Rowena Hart approached, her heart swelling with selfless instinct. No child should shiver at the city's gates. Beneath a dim yellow light shrouded by storm clouds, she found two tiny beings huddled in a thin blanket, their faces smudged, hair like tattered cloth strewn with mud. Beside them was a sodden envelope, its ink bleeding. "Please care for our children. Their names are Nova and Lyric." The plea shook her soul, a shard of hope flaring into a flame. She tucked the letter close, embracing the girls, vowing they'd never feel cold again. From that moment, Rowena Hart became their surrogate mother, scavenging for shelter, foraging food from bins, and finding love in small gestures. Days later, amid a grove of withered pines, she discovered an abandoned house, its walls stained with moss, its tin roof riddled with holes. It was like a strange dream. There, she pulled aside a window's tattered cloth, turning it into a miniature classroom, Dusty tables and chairs became a fairy tale lecture hall, broken mirror shards sparkling like diamonds in the flashlight's glow. She spread old books on the floor, teaching the girls to read and write in the thin dust. Each chalk stroke on the dirt walls held a story of perseverance. In that cracked, barren house, Rowena Hart's love turned poetry into lullabies, arithmetic into enchanting games. But fate always carries the weight of secrets. The letter's warning of danger haunted her. If her late husband's kin or authorities found them, the girls could lose their fragile peace. Rowena Hart chose silence, explaining to Nova and Lyric that the world outside wasn't always safe, that love sometimes needed to hide. She taught them to be silent like deer in the forest, observant like owls at night, and confident like flowers blooming amid rubble. Each lesson was a survival skill, each smile a triumph of faith. Now, as Nova and Lyric's grateful eyes met hers, Rowena Hart felt her years of suffering transform into a cherished reel of memories. She had rediscovered her teacher's mission in her heart, turning the abandoned house into a feast of learning, where the classroom had no chalkboard but eager gazes, no paper books but sails launching the girls toward knowledge. As she finished speaking, hearing the soft claps of her two angels, she knew that human love had conquered all fear, transforming tragedy into miracles, barrenness into an endless spring of hope. Ryder Blackwood sat before the expansive glass window of his high-rise office, gazing out at the city's flickering lights, a sea of stars in the night. Beside him lay a thick stack of files, each page revealing a fleeting clue, like frost trails on winter leaves. After his final call with the ambulance, Ryder knew he needed decisive action. He required someone who could transform wild secrets into truth, and that name was Sterling Cross, the private investigator famed as the weaver of light and darkness. The phone's sharp ring shattered the somber silence. "This is Ryder Blackwood," he said, his voice like a calm wind before a storm. "I need you to investigate the case of two young girls and Rowena Hart." Within an hour, Sterling Cross appeared in the office doorway, tall and lean, his eyes gleaming like lasers cutting through chaos. He adjusted his black tie, his voice steady. "I've heard the basics. The origins of the girls and Rowena Hart's records are nearly erased from the system." With his rare professional poise, Sterling locked eyes with Ryder, probing the shadowy corners of his counterpart's mind. "I need all documents, anything related to Hart, hospitals she visited, places she stayed." He lightly tapped a mini cigar on the desk, white smoke curling like a question mark across the room. On the first day, Sterling Cross dove into medical records with the fervor of an archaeologist brushing away history's dust. He scribbled notes, sifting through countless public and private hospitals where Rowena Hart might have been, medical charts, billing receipts, old cancer treatment files. Each page turned with a rustle, like ghostly footsteps in a deep cave. But the results were always empty, no trace of her name, no medical visit matching the dates. Amid the sea of records, Sterling sensed a haunting absence, as if pieces of a puzzle had been deliberately swept away, leaving a chilling void. Beyond hospitals, Sterling scoured household registries, homeless databases, credit cards, even unemployment insurance records. Every link to Rowena Hart's past was silent. Using privileged PIN codes, he accessed bank records, tracing transactions buried among charitable donations. Tiny transactions sparked his excitement, yet they revealed only meager purchases of basic food and bus tickets. No hint of wealth, no trace of significant funding. Everything was eerily quiet, like a paradise frozen in spring. At night, the desk lamp flickered like a frail candle, casting long shadows across the floor. Sterling looked up, staring out the office window at the darkened streets below. How could someone who existed among throngs of patients vanish completely? How could Rowena Hart live 4 years in obscurity without leaving a single clue? The question sliced through his mind like a blade, fueling his thirst for discovery while sending chills down his spine. Frustration morphed into renewed resolve. He had to find the letter. Sterling gathered all photos from the abandoned house, magnifying every detail. Shattered glass, children's footprints in damp soil, wrinkled fabric by the doorway. He marked the location of the lone envelope Rowena Hart had mentioned to Ryder, the one bearing Nova and Lyric's names and the plea, "Please care for our children." That letter might hold the key to unlocking a sealed chamber of secrets. Sterling's decade of experience guided each keystroke and page turn. He opened satellite maps, pinpointed GPS coordinates, and scanned red-marked charts. Printed maps bore boundaries and locations of Rowena Hart sightings, cross-referenced with places Ryder had taken the girls to hospitals. Every line converged at the abandoned house, the epicenter of the mystery. The detective tapped his fingers on the desk like a jazz riff, each beat signaling go all the way. He tapped his underground network, contacts at veterinary clinics and roadside diners who knew where Hart scavenged leftover food. Every scrap of evidence, a milk carton, a bread wrapper, was collected, pinned to his investigation board, like a director assembling a montage. But each lead dissolved like sea foam drifting away. New clues emerged only to vanish, a grim game of cat and mouse. Finally, after hundreds of calls and thousands of pages, Sterling Cross stepped onto the balcony. The quiet night rain cloaked the city, streetlights glinting on wet pavement. He gripped the file tightly, kicking a trash can by the wall. "Only one clue left," he whispered, his voice a soft caress. "The letter." The clock ticked toward dawn, but Sterling's mind grew sharper, like a sunset glowing backward. He gathered his papers, eyes flashing with resolve. He would find that lost envelope, drag its secrets into the light. Only by touching the story's origin could he unravel the shroud of darkness, restore laughter to Nova and Lyric, breathe life back into Rowena Hart, and give Ryder Blackwood the final answer. In the silent night, the detective softly whistled the hunt for mystery, stepping lightly into the hallway, ready to plunge into the labyrinth of truth with no way out. The pale light of the hospital room, like a thin veil of mist, reflected off the remnants of the breathing monitor, casting a mottled silver halo. In the corner, Octavia Reid quietly pushed a cleaning cart, her pristine white uniform glinting under the cold fluorescent glow. Her blonde hair was neatly tied back, her eyes as clear as twin emeralds, shimmering with a deep, hidden sorrow. She stood silently behind the door, her heart pounding each beat, heralding a turning point in her life. Octavia had heard of the two children and the woman struggling in an abandoned house. Now, she came not as an employee or contractor, but with a heart heavy with guilt. Rowena Hart's eyes fluttered open, recognizing the familiar figure in the dim light. "Octavia?" Her voice rasped, like fabric worn thin by countless washes. Octavia Reid nodded slightly, tears spilling before she could hold them back. She stepped forward, leaning close to the pale face, her trembling hand brushing Rowena's. Warmth so fragile it seemed to shatter on contact. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice choked with the sound of a bird with broken wings. "I'm sorry for leaving you to care for the children." Rowena Hart's cracked lips curved into a faint smile. "I wasn't alone, Octavia. You gave them a home when the world turned its back." Her eyes, tinged with sadness yet serene, were like a vast river forgiving all its burdens. Before Octavia could say more, memories flooded her. Freezing nights clutching a thin blanket, shivering through winter, haunted by the cries of two abandoned souls. She had drifted through life like a dewdrop, convincing herself she had to be strong enough not to hurt others. Outside the door, Ryder Blackwood's footsteps echoed softly in the brightly lit corridor. He had come to assist after receiving news of a critical case, but now he paused, his gaze fixed on the door, watching Octavia Reid, a woman he barely knew, yet whose eyes mirrored his own empathy and pain. Ryder shifted, ready to leave and give them privacy for this reunion. Suddenly the door creaked open, and Nova and Lyric appeared in freshly changed hospital gowns, clutching blanket edges tightly. They looked at Octavia with eyes blending curiosity and affection. Nova whispered, "Who are you?" Her voice trembled faintly amid the steady hum of the ventilator. Octavia stepped back, tears streaming down her cheeks, her face reflecting the image of the mother she'd been separated from 4 years ago. A pang of longing. I'm your mother." She knelt before Nova and Lyric, her voice frail as torn silk. The room fell silent, save for the racing heartbeats and uneven breaths of a mother reunited. Lyric tiptoed forward, her tiny hands touching Octavia's cheeks, melting the fears in her heart. "Are you crying because of us?" Lyric asked, her voice soft as an autumn breeze. Octavia nodded, tears bursting like lilies in the night mist. "I've cried for 4 years, not a single day without missing you." A hurried embrace tightened in the cramped space. Nova and Lyric wrapped their arms around their mother's waist, touching her heart with wordless devotion. Octavia sobbed uncontrollably, her tears like a shattered Milky Way, flooding the cold hospital room. Rowena Hart took a shallow breath, her eyes glistening as if witnessing the children's souls return to their source. She reached out, brushing Octavia's uneven hair, her smile brimming with hope. "Everything's all right now. The children have their mother, their grandmother, and Ryder Blackwood by their side." Octavia gripped Nova's hand, soothing her. "I left you out of fear, afraid of the dangers lurking." Her heart tore through memories, a powerful boss who threatened her, vowing to take her children the moment they were born. That threat was etched in her mind, a relentless shadow. She shuddered, recalling the cold gaze of that influential figure. Nights spent awake by the phone, dreading its ring. Rowena whispered, "But the children were safe with me." Her gaze, like the last rays of sunlight, dispelled all gloom. The meaning of motherhood isn't in distance, but in a heart brave enough to love. Her words struck Octavia's core, lifting her head, her clear eyes reigniting with faith. Rowena guided the children to place their hands on their mother's chest. "Feel the warmth of a mother's love, and never let fear seize your heart." In that moment, the hospital room became a shrine to maternal love. Ryder Blackwood stepped in, inhaling the poignant mix of tears and human warmth. He nodded in celebration. "We've found each other." His face glowed with joy, like an artist completing a final symphony. Octavia Reid, Nova, Lyric, and Rowena Hart gathered together, forming a warm circle amid the beeps of machines and the noblest sound of all, human hearts beating in unison, singing an eternal song of reunion. In each person's eyes, loneliness vanished, leaving only patient love and enduring hope. The sunset's final glow bathed the city in pink, reflecting off the glass walls of Ryder Blackwood's penthouse like a shimmering river of light. He stood before the living room door, his hand grazing the doorbell, his heartbeat tightening like war drums signaling an upheaval. The door swung open, and Cassian Troy stepped in with poised elegance, his gray suit jacket draped over his arm, his eyes tracing the fading streaks of daylight. They were brothers by blood, but this meeting carried a weight heavier than any billion-dollar deal. It was time to confront the truth about the lineage of the two angels, Nova and Lyric. Cassian Troy paused at the threshold, his probing gaze sweeping the luxurious space now thick with tension. Behind him, Nova and Lyric played on a plush rug, their curious eyes sparkling like tiny stars yet to grasp their destiny. They froze upon noticing the stranger, their innocent gazes tinged with confusion. Ryder Blackwood dipped his head in greeting, his voice warm yet steady. "Come in, Cassian. I have something important to discuss." The living room was hushed, save for the faint strains of classical music drifting from a high-end sound system. Ryder gently guided his brother to a clear glass table in the center, where a thick envelope and an open laptop awaited. On the table, 2 enlarged DNA reports glowed with faint blue hues, their double helices rippling like ocean waves. Ryder sat, his eyes fixed on the paper. Cassian, these are DNA test results from New York's most reputable lab. You are the biological father of Nova and Lyric. The declaration struck like thunder in a clear sky, freezing Cassian Troy in place, his face draining of color. He gripped the chair's edge, words drying up in his throat. Impossible. It can't be, he muttered, his fingers trembling like brittle branches in a gust. Ryder sipped his black coffee, a stray drop falling onto the test cover, adding to the conversation's weight. "Do you want me to explain, or will you read it yourself?" Ryder asked, his tone unyielding. Cassian lifted his gaze, fighting a wave of dizziness, his eyes glistening in the dim light. He leaned forward, flipping through the DNA map, reading each figure. 99.9%. No family could be mistaken. His breaths came in surges, like waves crashing ashore, each one eroding the pride and power that had once ruled his heart. Ryder watched silently, letting the quiet anchor the truth as it pierced his brother's core. After a long pause, Cassian exhaled, his shoulders trembling. He rose and paced the room like a lost animal seeking escape. The dim golden light cast his shadow on the wall, stretching into a giant question mark. Finally, he stopped before a photo of the children on a bookshelf. Nova beaming brightly, Lyric playfully waving. They have a real reason to live. His voice sank, laced with regret and self-reproach. I was wrong, too consumed by ambition, too obsessed with power to see the responsibility I carried. Ryder stood beside him, resting a hand on his shoulder, his gaze both resolute and generous. You're not just a man who builds empires, Cassian. Now you can use that empire to protect the most precious lives. The girls need a father who's strong but also knows how to love. His words fell gently, like rain after a drought, soothing Cassian's bleeding heart. Cassian nodded faintly, the veneer of power fading behind a face etched with remorse. He knelt before Nova and Lyric, his eyes shimmering like two small stars taking flight. "My girls," he called softly, his voice breaking with emotion. Nova looked up, her eyes hazy like the first light of dawn. Hesitantly, he placed a hand on Lyric's head, gently ruffling her hair, as if smoothing the threads of a fate gone astray. Lyric smiled, grasping his large finger, as if passing him a spark of sacred trust. Ryder's gaze shifted to Rowena Hart, watching from a distance with a proud smile. She stepped forward, brushing back her silver hair, her voice warm. "Family isn't just blood, it's love and protection. Cassian, welcome home." She enveloped the girls in a hug, then guided Cassian into the warm embrace, framing a vibrant tableau of reunion and hope. In that moment, the penthouse walls seemed to dissolve, revealing a boundless sky. Ryder, Cassian, Rowena, Nova, and Lyric stood together, forming a tight circle of hope and kinship. The instant they tore down the veil of power to reveal their truest selves marked the closing of a sorrowful chapter and the opening of a new one for their family. As the city lights twinkled in the distance like a Milky Way, they looked forward, where love and sacrifice would be the lighthouse guiding their every step ahead. The morning sunlight streamed through the penthouse's wide windows, painting golden ribbons across the wooden floor, like a bow tied around a wish for peace. Ryder Blackwood stood in the living room, now brimming with new life. Once a cold expanse of concrete walls, the space had transformed into a warm haven where kinship reigned. The pristine white walls now bore the marks of Nova and Lyric, whimsical drawings of hopping bunnies and smiling suns, dripping like sunlight turned to sound. Each creation was a flower of imagination, blooming amid the precarious urban skyline. Since the girls moved in, the penthouse had become a luxurious ship recarved. The living room morphed into a playground with soft, furry rugs, the wide sofa draped in vibrant blankets like a slice of autumn sky. Rowena Hart, wrapped in a scarf, flitted among colorful throw pillows, whispering bedtime fairy tales to the girl. Her voice, like a cool stream, soothed all weariness, turning the penthouse into a magical garden where poetry bloomed with familial warmth. Octavia Reid claimed a quiet corner by the bedroom window where sunset tinted the silk curtains pink. Once a shadow lost in the world, she now watched her two angels engrossed in coloring, their fine blonde hair swaying like festive banners greeting the day. Octavia smiled, vowing to attend every parent-teacher meeting and sing lullabies to the girls, ensuring her motherly love would never be absent. Cassian Troy, once a titan of power and ambition, now found unexpected joy in the tinkling music of spinning dolls and the patter of tiny princess shoes. Leaning against the carved wooden dining table, he gazed at the glittering city bay. Each evening he joined the family dinner, savoring Rowena Hart's steaming ginger soup and the small rolls Octavia brought home, spinning on plates, a reminder that love could sprout from the tiniest seeds. On Sunday mornings, sunlight pierced the glass ceiling, making the floor shimmer like a sea of stars. Ryder Blackwood and Cassian Troy set up chairs on the balcony, 4 cushioned seats, 0 seats circling a coffee table. They read the paper, but it soon became a backdrop for the girls' humorous tales. Nova spun stories of a green bunny's adventures, while Lyric belted out childhood songs, prompting the men to clap like festival drums. A makeshift classroom took shape in the kitchen corner, a small wooden table, blue plastic chairs, and a neatly arranged pencil box, like a row of soldiers. Rowena Hart dubbed it the magical classroom, where lessons extended beyond books to word games and a wooden box turned treasure chest for alphabet gems. Ryder often sat behind, watching the girls furrow their brows over their first math problems, his eyes gleaming with pride as their small, clumsy hands patiently filled in blanks. Each evening, warm golden light bathed the walls, where Nova and Lyric displayed a family photo collection. Ryder in a hard hat by a plane, Rowena teaching under a tree, Octavia gently drying the girls' hair, Cassian laughing in the garden. The photos were like memory blossoms, scenting the small room with companionship. Morning cleanups were a family performance. Ryder swept the floor and drew curtains. Rowena wiped tables. Octavia stacked dishes, and Cassian brewed tea. The work moved slowly, like a symphony, resonating with unity. A breeze from the balcony stirred potted plants, carrying the distant scent of the sea, a reminder that while the world spun chaotically outside, they were guarding a small paradise within. At night, as Nova and Lyric slept soundly on a large double bed, a rabbit-shaped nightlight cast a soft glow. Octavia Reid and Cassian Troy sat by the window table, sharing snippets of the day. They chuckled over Lyric's new song, or Nova's leap when a candy fell on the rug. Despite busy lives, they made time to listen, tightening the bonds of kinship. Ryder stepped onto the balcony, inhaling deeply, counting the twinkling stars in the quiet night. Hope surged within him. This house was no longer mere property, but a home. Human warmth radiated from the living room, seeping into every corner, turning cold walls into witnesses of love and care. Tonight he would sleep soundly in the embrace of family, dreaming of the journey ahead, where every step was steady, because they had each other. As waves gently lapped the shore, a promise for tomorrow echoed. Together we'll keep going. In the vast expanse of the high-rise penthouse, the breaths of Ryder Blackwood, Rowena Hart, Octavia Reid, Cassian Troy, Nova, and Lyric blended into a serene melody, affirming that family, when nurtured, could transform any building into paradise, and every memory into a museum of happiness. The warm glow from the towering Christmas tree in the penthouse living room stretched like a twinkling Milky Way, casting the breath of family onto each artificial pine needle. Ryder Blackwood stepped across the soft carpet, where the tiny footprints of Nova and Lyric left streaks of oil paint from their creations the night before. A space once stifled by lavish success, now brimmed with the ethereal light of kinship. Handmade wool garlands crafted by Rowena Hart, interwoven with cardboard cutouts, framed with family photos by Octavia Reid and Cassian Troy during their first reunion after years apart. Each small trinket was a gem of memory. From a photo of Sterling Cross, the detective who concluded Ryder's search for the children, to a Christmas card from Tallulah Grant wishing Rowena Hart well, transforming the room into a glowing museum of warmth. As winter winds whistled softly through the balcony door, the flickering light of candles tucked beneath the tree twinkled like beacons guiding ships home. Family members gathered around a round dining table. Ryder raised a crystal glass, his voice resonant like a cello, inviting all to toast. This year taught us that forgiveness isn't forgetting, but giving each other a chance to write a new chapter. For love, for family, for enduring hope, let's raise our glasses. The clink of crystal echoed, a resolute agreement amidst the chilly surroundings. Octavia Reid smiled softly, her eyes shimmering with the first true happiness in years of turmoil. She wrapped Nova and Lyric in a tight embrace, like a bird shielding its nest, whispering, "I'm so proud of you both. You brought me back to our family." Her gentle words, like a spring breeze, dissolved the fog in their hearts, letting the children feel their mother's warmth. The dim light cast a rosy glow on Lyric's cheeks, like a flower blooming through snow. A little further off, Cassian Troy leaned back in an armchair, watching Rowena Hart smile as she coaxed the girls to try her freshly baked gingerbread. Her soft voice carried wisdom. A home isn't just bricks and glass, it's love and devoted care. Each gingerbread piece she handed Nova was more than a treat. It was a lullaby. Here, you are always safe. The crisp snap of each bite rang like a cheerful Christmas tune, banishing any lingering cold in the room. The girls' laughter mingled with the lilting Christmas music, filling the space. Ryder Blackwood turned to the scene, wondering if any billion-dollar deal had ever felt as fulfilling as this moment. He silently thanked fate for reuniting him with this extraordinary family, casting aside the shadows of the past to embrace the power of human connection. The Christmas feast welcomed friends who had walked alongside them. Sterling Cross, the seasoned detective who tirelessly tracked clues for the girls, and Tallulah Grant, the dedicated doctor who cared for Rowena Hart in her critical early days. They joined in, carrying trays of pastries and clinking glasses. To hearts unafraid of danger, to those who dare to love truly. Their hearty laughter sang like a hymn, echoing faith in Christmas miracle. As the feast neared its end, Ryder led the girls to the balcony, where the distant chime of harbor bells rang in their ears. The Christmas Eve sky shimmered with mystic mist, each star a gleaming jewel, nodding blessings to the reunion of lost souls. Nova traced a hazy heart in the air with her paint-streaked fingers, while Lyric chirped "Silent Night." Ryder wrapped them in his thick coat, whispering, "No one is lost when we have each other." That night, the penthouse became a cozy nest, each synchronized breath a reminder. Family is a harbor where we can drop anchor and rest. Octavia Reid leaned against the window frame, gazing at the city bay, where century-old lights swayed like hands kindling happiness. Beside her, Cassian Troy gently squeezed his sister-in-law's hand, his gratitude refracting. "Thank you all for giving me the chance to be a father, to love, and to be forgiven." His words, soft yet weighty, felt like a time machine rewinding to an open heart. In the sparkling ambiance, Rowena Hart guided the girls to a side table, placing a small gift box before each. Bright red ribbons tied around books of early lessons and hand-knitted bunny dolls. The children squealed with delight, their eyes sparking with hope for future adventures in knowledge. She advised, "Reading is magic. It lets you soar beyond all limits." Her words resonated like an ancient chant, affirming that education and love never run dry. Finally, as the sacred Christmas hour arrived, the family gathered to sing "O Holy Night." Ryder Blackwood's deep voice blended with Rowena Hart's smooth tones, crafting a symphony of joy. Nova and Lyric closed their eyes, their small hearts pulsing with each note, united in feeling the magic of kinship. In that moment, the penthouse was no longer a monument to wealth, but a fountain of love, an eternal song of hope and new beginnings for a remarkable family. Listening to the deeply moving journey of Ryder Blackwood, the iron-willed billionaire who becomes the guiding flame for twin angels Nova and Lyric, along with Octavia Reid's sacrificial maternal love, Rowena Hart's steadfast courage, and Cassian Troy's lesson in forgiveness, I'm reminded of the true power of love. Thank you for following Millionaire and Heart Stories.